Ladies and gentlemen, it's finally here. I'm going to be ranking my top 100 favorite roller coasters I've ridden as of the end of 2023. I've been putting this off for a while because figuring out what 100 roller coasters are worthy of this list and then figuring out how to rank them has proven to be extremely difficult. It's currently December 23rd when I'm writing this script, and right now I have been on 786 different coasters around the world. As one may expect, more than half of these are situated in America, but I've also ridden coasters in Canada, Mexico, and 11 European countries. Nothing in Asia yet, but come 2024 I am hoping to change that. With that in mind, my list will constantly be changing as I travel to more places and as I have time to reflect on past experiences. So who knows how my top 100 will look in a year or two. All I can say for sure is I'm proud of what I've put together here, and all 100 of these amazing creations deserve the spotlight in this video. I will be breaking this down into two parts like I usually do, so we'll talk about spots 100 to 51 today and spots 50 to 1 a few days from now. Let me know what you think of my list in the comments, and with that being said, let's dive in. Kicking things off at the number 100 spot is Superman Krypton Coaster at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. This unique floorless coaster from B&M is the only ride of its kind to make this list. It has such a fantastic layout with its 6 forceful inversions and interactivity with the terrain. Even the second half is great, as it tends to run without trims like when I rode it in 2020. Volcano the Blast Coaster at Virginia's Kings Dominion is one of the only defunct roller coasters to make my list, and I was so fortunate to experience it weeks before it shut down in 2018. The coaster had 2 excellent launches before thrusting you out of that man-made volcano. It was such a novelty, and I don't think we'll ever see a ride quite like it again. Black Mamba at Phantasialand in Germany is one of my favorite inverts from ride manufacturer B&M. Its unique layout remains beneath ground level the majority of the time and packs in lots of intense elements. I also found the theming to add a lot to the experience, both visually and as it relates to near misses. Furious Baco at Spain's Portaventura World is the only traditional wing coaster built by Intamin. Having said that, it's really not so traditional at all. It's one of 3 wing coasters to feature a launch, and that element is one of the core reasons this ride makes my top 100. It's not the smoothest experience overall, but if you can look past that, Furious Baco is a rush from start to finish. Candemonium at Hershey Park is the first of quite a few B&M hypercoasters you'll see on my list. This one is incredibly smooth and features plenty of that wonderful sustained floater airtime. It's far from the most intense ride in the world, but not all roller coasters need to be that way. Rocky Mountain Construction took the amusement industry by storm, and the first of their rides to make my list is Twisted Cyclone at Six Flags Over Georgia. Though short, this coaster packs in many instances of powerful ejector airtime and maintains a great speed throughout. I find the inversions kind of generic compared to other RMCs, but Twisted Cyclone throws you out of your seat just as well as the others. Diamondback at Kings Island in Ohio is another great B&M hypercoaster with a beautiful layout through the woods. It has the familiar floater airtime you've come to expect from this model, and I love the splashdown at the end. The only reason it isn't higher is it shakes you around a little bit, and I do think other similar coasters have better airtime. Most old-school wooden coasters are nothing more than nostalgic, but the Coney Island Cyclone at New York's Luna Park remains an exceptional coaster after nearly a century of operation. Not only does it have bunches of airtime, but also some of the best side-by-side laterals of any ride in the world. It's remarkable how well they've been able to maintain this thing, and I hope it continues to provide a comfortable, thrilling experience for years to come. The first New Age Vekoma ride to make my list is Phoenix at Farup Summerland in Denmark. This is one of the most textbook perfect roller coasters I've been on. I just wish it were a bit more intense for my liking. Otherwise, it has an incredibly diverse sequence of elements with airtime, inversions, and quick transitions. It's also perfectly smooth and one of those coasters I could ride all day without getting bored. The first of 2 coasters in a row at Florida's Busch Gardens Tampa, Montu is perhaps my favorite B&M invert. I think the fact that I have rides like this in the 90s is a testament to how many exceptional roller coasters I've been on. I love so much about this experience, from its inversions to its intensity and its underground trenches to top it all off. It also opened in 1996, and there's not a hint of a vibration to be found. On the other end of Busch Gardens Tampa is the sit-down looping coaster Kumba. This is a fairly similar ride to Montu with equal intensity and lots of great elements. B&M has built many rides that seem like they'd feel similar, but Kumba somehow rises above the rest, and I love it for that. It's not often you come across the hydraulic launch, but Storm Runner at Hershey Park is one of the finest remaining examples in America. What I love about this coaster is it isn't as short as similar rides. After the drop, you still have 3 unique inversions and a couple moments of rapid-fire transitions. Storm Runner is a very funky but very fun ride. Accelerator at Knott's Berry Farm in California is the original iteration of the Intamin Accelerator model. It may not have the second half of Stormrunner, but its launch and drop are even more crazy, and it still packs in some forceful overbank curves to end out the ride. It's a short but sweet coaster the whole way through. Up in Idaho, we have our first of 3 roller coasters from Silverwood to make our list, and that's Tremors. This is a mostly wooden coaster from CCI with a lot of variety. There's some really excellent airtime in its tunnels, plus some unique sustained laterals that you get while gliding on retracked steel sections from RMC. I think I'd be a little disappointed if it all turned to steel, but as it is right now, it's a very interesting ride and a lot of fun. The Incredible Hulk at Universal's Islands of Adventure in Florida is one of the most iconic roller coasters in the world, and it lives up to its intimidating stature by featuring 7 intense inversions and some amazing theming. I can also appreciate the epic onboard audio, which rounds out the experience even further. Let's make our way back to Europe for Tonnerre to Zeus at Parc Asterix in France. This coaster provides 2 vastly different experiences, and that's how you can either ride it forwards or backwards. While both are fantastic, backwards makes this one of the coolest wooden coasters ever. I love how it combines the aspects of a CCI and Gravity group, plus its layout is just so long it feels like it never ends. Let's talk about Vekoma Giant Inverted Boomerangs, one of the most underappreciated coaster models out there. I've ridden 2 of these, and one of them is Stuntfall at Parque Warner Madrid in Spain. This is just a stupidly intense experience, and it feels like the train is traveling too fast through some of its elements. I also find myself getting freaked out on its 2 vertical spikes, which are very tall. Aftershock at Silverwood is the only ride of its kind in America and basically identical to Stuntfall. The only difference is how they're maintained, and I'd say Aftershock is a tad bit smoother. But they're otherwise very intense and crazy roller coasters that I think every enthusiast should try to get on at some point. Storm Chaser at Kentucky Kingdom is the second lowest ranked RMC in my top 100, and I know I'm in the minority there. I just didn't think it was nearly as powerful as some others made it out to be. But I can still acknowledge its awesome airtime, with my favorite moments being the first camelback and the twisted double down at the end. It's a smooth, fun coaster, and I certainly enjoyed lapping it in the rain when I visited on the last day of the 2022 season. Piraten at Djurs Summerland in Denmark hardly clears the 100-foot mark, yet it has more airtime than coasters 3 times its size. It's a very punchy little ride with so many whippy elements, and it's so re-rideable as well. Lightning Run at Kentucky Kingdom is my favorite coaster in the state, and it reminds me a lot of Piraten actually. It has extremely similar stats and forces, but I actually think Chance Rides did a better job than Intamin. I know it sounds strange, but this is a peculiarly amazing ride for its size. I think it's ridiculous we don't have more rides like this out there. Monster at Adventureland in Iowa is one of the most underrated roller coasters in America. I honestly feel like it should be higher on my list, but I know I can't move it up past this point. It's got an incredible first drop past 90 degrees and a collection of 5 inversions with some of the best hang time on the planet. One thing I was worried about going in is not every Gerstlauer is the smoothest, but I'm happy to say Monster couldn't be any more comfortable. Cannibal at Utah's Lagoon is a fascinating in-house built roller coaster with the tallest beyond vertical drop in the world. But it's not a one-trick pony at all. Cannibal also features some very cool, kind of funky inversions to round things out. I also love that elevator lift hill because it's so rare you see something like that. Pennsylvania is home to lots of family theme parks, and one of my favorites, Waldameer, is home to a truly remarkable star attraction. Ravine Flyer 2 has a very cool layout, passing over a road, actually exiting the park, and then returning via a series of tunnels. It's got great pacing, lots of airtime, and it's just a very fun wooden coaster. Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure at Islands of Adventure is probably the tamest roller coaster to make this list. It's borderline a family coaster, so what about it warrants a top 100 spot? The answer, easily, is the theming. At a cost of $300 million US, Hagrid's is arguably the most expensive coaster ever built, and with all of its attention to detail, plus 7 launches, a backward section, and a drop track, it's easy to understand why. Mako at SeaWorld Orlando in Florida is one of those pure fun roller coasters that nearly anyone can enjoy. Unlike some of the older B&M hypers, every single hill in this one gives ample floater airtime, and I think it's just about as smooth as it gets. The only drawback is the post-midcore section that I find to be a pretty weak ending to the experience. Behemoth at Canada's Wonderland really exceeded my expectations when I rode it 4 whole years ago now. It's got a seemingly endless series of camelbacks in the first half and a superior finale to something like Mako. I also adore the orange on orange color scheme over the water. I think it's one of the most visually appealing coasters I've ever seen. The most excruciatingly underrated RMC in my eyes is Joker at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom in Northern California. I don't think there's many other people who would put this above Storm Chaser or Twisted Cyclone, but I love this ride. It has a nice combination of inversions, especially the two at the beginning, and plenty of that ejector airtime you know and love. It's one of the most overlooked rides to make my list, and I'm glad I get to show it some appreciation in this video. From one of the most underrated to one of the most overrated coasters I've ridden, Superman the Ride at Massachusetts Six Flags New England is still a great ride, but it's not world class. The layout is exciting with big airtime hills in the first half and a twisted mess of steel in the second half. It does have some amazing airtime, but I draw issue to the restraints and the ride's bizarre track profiling. Copperhead Strike at Carowinds, located on the South Carolina side of the border, is a spectacular mock multi-launch coaster. The launches on this ride are weak, there's no denying that, but the rest is so much fun combining many different elements. It's got powerful airtime, great hang time, quick transitions, and some nice theming to top it all off. It was the exact perfect fit for the park when it opened in 2019 and one of the best coasters in the Southeast. The first of 3 wooden coasters that'll appear from Indiana's Holiday World is Raven. This coaster is just 80 feet tall and 48 miles per hour, but don't let these stats fool you. This thing runs like a bat out of hell, especially in the second half when it flies through the trees. It is on the shorter side though, and that's why it's the lowest ranked of this park's woodies. Sin City wasn't made. Balder at Liseberg in Sweden is very different from most wooden roller coasters. Since it uses prefabricated track, it runs as smooth as silk and has much sharper airtime. There's no doubt that it's a repetitive ride, but what it does extremely well. You were launched out of your seat time and time again, and I couldn't get enough of it. Contrary to most RMCs, Medusa Steel Coaster at Six Flags Mexico puts less emphasis on airtime and more emphasis on speed and pacing. It's got a very satisfying layout with great sequencing of its elements, and plus at night it absolutely rips through its layout. Going in, I wasn't sure if I was going to love or dislike the Beast at Kings Island. As it turns out, the ride is amazing. It feels very special, and I think the primary reason is its length and setting. 7,300 feet of track, and you go so far from the rest of the park. The reason it ranks so high for me can mostly be credited to its world-class night rides though. That's peak time to be riding the Beast. Thunderhead at Dollywood in Tennessee is an action-packed wooden coaster from GCI. The ride has excellent pacing, lots of strong forces, and a layout that uses the terrain to its advantage. I've heard it's running incredible after its retrack, so I'm guessing it would go even higher if I rode it today. Another spectacular GCI wooden coaster is Prowler at Worlds of Fun in Missouri. This is another terrain coaster, but like really a terrain coaster. It's not that tall or fast, but it throws a lot at you and the transitions are intense. It's also very whippy if you're in that back row. Phoenix at Pennsylvania's Knoebels is a ride with a stature that isn't intimidating by any stretch. The reason it's able to rank so high despite it being so small is it's got practically no restraint. You go flying out of your seat on each of the ride's hills, and even though it's repetitive, I love it so much. My favorite roller coaster in the country of Mexico is Superman El Último Escape at Six Flags Mexico. This is Morgan's best ground-up creation as it has an incredible variety of elements. There are several shockingly powerful moments of airtime and some of the best sustained laterals on any steel coaster. It and Medusa Steel Coaster round out a strong 1-2 punch for this park. Renegade at Valley Fair in Minnesota has one of the best layouts on a GCI wooden coaster. It focuses a lot on high-speed low-to-the-ground bank turns, but also pops you up out of your seat on some of those higher elements. It's not as smooth as similar rides, but that's pretty much the only thing I can knock it for. I know this one's going to get me a lot of hate, but Mystic Timbers at Kings Island in Ohio doesn't even make my top 50. It's a great ride with a well-designed layout through the woods, but it's not as intense as other GCIs. It is remarkably smooth though, and I got some amazing night rides on it, which brings it up quite a bit. Onto the trio of RMC Raptors, let's first talk about Stunt Pilot at Silverwood. This compact roller coaster has some sneaky good forces in its elements. Lots of powerful airtime in that single file seating arrangement and some great pacing too. It's a very short ride, but what it has is a ton of fun. Wonder Woman Golden Lasso Coaster at Six Flags Fiesta Texas was the prototype RMC Raptor coaster, and I don't think they intended for it to be so intense. The difference between this and Stunt Pilot are some of these elements are a bit more sharp, plus the pacing is dialed up a notch further. It's a rowdy ride, but one I'd love to marathon just to see how much I could withstand. Railblazer at California's Great America reigns supreme as my favorite Raptor by a small thread. The only difference about this compared to Wonder Woman is I find it a tad bit smoother, but they otherwise feel completely the same in my opinion, so everything I said about that ride applies here as well. Goliath at Six Flags Great America in Illinois is one of the most underappreciated RMC coasters. It's one of the few built from wood track, which gives it some personality, plus the layout is amazing. There may not be too many elements overall, but what it has is spectacular. It's got a few incredible airtime moments, 2 world-class inversions, and some cool overbank turns that pack in lateral forces. Gale Force at Playland's Castaway Cove in New Jersey is one of, if not the most underrated roller coaster I've ridden. It was built by S&S Worldwide and is their only LSM launch coaster they've ever installed. But the launches aren't the highlight, it's the funky airtime and positive forces that are. The track profiling on this ride is totally bizarre, but I think it makes the elements all the more fun and interesting. One of my more unpopular opinions is that I rank Terran at Germany's Phantasialand so low on my list. There's things about this ride that I absolutely love, like the theming and layout, but I don't think enough people talk about how surprisingly tame this ride is, with some pacing issues at the end of each half. Still, it's a fantastic coaster overall, and number 55 is nothing to scoff at. Helix at Liseberg in Sweden is a mock multi-launch coaster with terrible launches but amazing everything else. It's one of the most varied layouts I've ever seen, and it interacts beautifully with the terrain. All 7 inversions are a lot of fun, and Helix also packs in 2 outstanding camelback hills. I think it could afford to be a bit more intense, but otherwise it's a brilliant attraction. An often overlooked coaster in Europe is Flucht von Novgorod at Hansa Park. I love how this coaster combines theming and layout. It's a storytelling experience, but has an intense sequence of elements too. My favorite part is the launch, which is the fastest acceleration of any launch that uses LSMs, aka most of them. This ride is so much fun, and I think more people should start paying attention to it. Time Traveler at Missouri's Silver Dollar City was the prototype extreme spinning coaster by Mock Rides. It's obviously not going to be as intense as later installations, but it is a blast to ride and so incredibly unique. The largest drop on the ride takes place right out of the station, and along with all of its other elements, if you take this backwards, it is insane. The theming is also incredible, but I wouldn't expect anything less from Silver Dollar City. Let's wrap up part 1 with one of my very unpopular opinions. Next up is Boss at Six Flags St. Louis. I have no idea why this ride gets so much hate. Sure, it's a little rough, but when I rode it in 2021, it was far from bad. As for the layout, this thing is a monster. It's got a drop of 150 feet down a hillside and a track length of 4,600 feet. Riding this at night was still to this day one of the greatest experiences I've ever had on a wooden roller coaster. Alright, now that's gonna do it for part 1 of the top 100 roller coasters I've ridden. If you enjoyed, feel free to give this video a like and subscribe to Coaster Dash so you don't miss any content like this in the future. Also, stay tuned for part 2 featuring spots 50 to 1. That should be dropping in a few days' time. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye guys.